Fellow Earthlings, welcome to Level Your Playing Field. I have a cold, so please excuse me. I will be clearing my throat probably through the show, and I know that's annoying, but I keep losing my voice, and I have to clear my throat in order to, excuse me, be able to continue to talk. I have a lot this week and next week because February is Black History Month. Excuse me. But I have 3 videos today. One is I promised Glenn Roulette I would play a compilation that he made up of a song called "Oh Happy Day" from another country, and at the very last he advocates the fact that he's running for mayor in the city of Manchester, New Hampshire. I also have the Whoopi Goldberg movie version of Sister Act Part 2, where the students of a Catholic school are struggling to keep the school open. Excuse me. And the students are made up of just about every nationality that you can imagine, which to me is the way it's supposed to be. The lay people of that particular diocese were trying to close it down because there was not enough funding. The building was falling apart. And Whoopi Goldberg, who was not a real nun but was impersonating a nun, got these kids together to believe in themselves. And at the end of the movie, they win the competition. And this is the thing that keeps me going, is that if people take away your belief in yourself, you lose yourself. And every once in a while, somebody comes along that is a straight arrow and that has no axe to grind except to help you to find yourself again and believe in yourself and believe in the Creator. So before I begin that, I read the most incredible crime story out of Colleyville, Texas, where a housekeeper was found dead near Fort Worth in September. She was killed for a $1 million insurance scam. Anita Fox, 72. She was stabbed in a house that she was cleaning. She was a long-time housekeeper. And it would appear that Gerard Gorman, 48, and his son Bernard Gorman, 27, decided to kill her after the father began buying a life insurance policy of $1 million for this woman he was not related to. And what I find very, very puzzling is how come the insurance company allowed this man to buy this life insurance policy of such a high amount for what may have been a housekeeper she was the housekeeper of many, including the Gorman family. Can you imagine the coldness and the unbelievable callousness of this man to have this woman come in and clean his home and let the time pass so that while he was making the payments, he knew that at some point he was going to kill her, and he stabbed her to death. And I'm hoping that because the FBI is involved in this, and the Texas Department of Insurance are investigating whether more people are involved and if there was a larger insurance fraud scheme. So it could be more than one. It could be a network. But to the family of this beautiful woman, this was a nice-looking lady, and she was a fellow human being. And so to that family, I send my sincerest condolences. Now, it is also February, in honor of Susan B. Anthony, February 15th was the anniversary of Susan B. Anthony's birthday. She was an iconic representation of the women's suffrage movement. She dedicated her life to women's rights and most especially working to expand women's citizenship by winning the right to vote. Anthony worked tirelessly for women's suffrage, believing that the voices of all women were vital for democratic justice. In 1906, on her 86th birthday, Susan B. Anthony gave her last public speech. She used the opportunity to honor others with whom she had worked throughout her life for what she often called simple justice. She ended her speech with a confident belief that when people of good heart and purpose work together, failure is impossible. To honor Susan B. Anthony and the countless others who worked to secure a woman's right to vote, Winning the Vote, The Triumphs of American Women's Suffrage Movement is a book that will be on sale at 40% discount from February 15th to March 8th, International Women's Day. This book belongs in every school and community library. It tells the dramatic story of the unyielding belief that women's voices are essential to America's democracy. The tenacity and triumph of the 72-year-old nonviolent campaign for women's right to vote is a story that all Americans need to know. And if you go to the website, the email address is nwhip@nwhip.org. I'll read that again. It is the National Women's History Project, and the email is abbreviated N as in Nelly, WHP@nwhp.org. There's a lot more information on this website. As also February is Book History Month, and on that website are some of the men and women who have contributed to the betterment of this country in all of its formats. And I'm going to try to get to some of that today if I have time. Now, I'd like to get Glenn Ouellette's video on first. I don't remember the sequence that I told John. John, which was the first one I mentioned? John? Oh, okay. Unbeknown to a lot of students in past generations, in World War I, there was a very famous military platoon. They were called the Harlem Hellfighters. And I found a clip. There's many clips on YouTube, but this one I'd like to share with you, and then I'll talk a little bit more about them after this video clip is concluded.
On April 20th, 1918, Lieutenant James Reese Europe accompanied a French night patrol across no man's land under heavy enemy fire, and became the first African-American officer to face combat during the war. The men of the 15th Regiment would survive 191 days of fierce combat, receive the Croix de Guerre, and be chosen by the French High Command to lead the Allied forces to the Rhine. By the end of the war, 171 men of the 15th Infantry were decorated for bravery, more than from any other American regiment. The men took special pride in the name the French gave them, the Hellfighters. And when they came home at last in February 1919 for a victory parade up Fifth Avenue to Harlem, New Yorkers, black and white, poured into the streets to cheer them. That spring, Europe and his Hellfighters band cut 24 records and made a triumphant tour of the country, spreading their hot new music and drawing big, cheering, integrated crowds everywhere they went.
And James Reese Europe is similar to many of the great figures in American music in that he's always trying to synthesize elements around him that seem to disagree. And when people start to hear this band, a concert band, which is usually playing in that kind of strict, stiff way, playing this loose, kind of grooving, lilting fashion, they can't believe what they're hearing. Man, everybody is going crazy. And James Reese Europe is looking at the response of the people, and he's saying to himself, let's do this some more.
James Reese Europe had big plans for peacetime. To merge jazz and ragtime into a wholly new kind of African-American music. We won France by playing music which was ours and not a pale imitation of others, he said. And if we are to develop in America, we must develop along our own lines. On the morning of May 9th, 1919, Europe was in Boston, scheduled to lay a wreath at the base of the memorial to the 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War. But the evening before the ceremony, Europe was confronted by one of his drummers, a high-strung man named Herbert Wright. The two men had words. Wright accused his boss of treating him unfairly, then suddenly stabbed Europe in the neck with a penknife. That night, James Reese Europe bled to death. The loss was incalculable, said the New York Times. Ragtime may be Negro music, but it is American Negro music, more alive than much other American music. And Europe was one of the Americans who was contributing most to its development. The city of New York gave him an official funeral, the first ever granted to a black citizen. Thousands of mourners, black and white, turned out to see the procession pass from Harlem down the West Side to St. Mark's Episcopal Church. He took the colored of this city from their porters' places, said the priest, and raised them to positions of importance as real musicians.
The reason I showed this particular clip is because I watched Stevie Wonder, a program on Monday. They celebrated his music and his contribution, and all the other people that are benefit, including other musicians with their own kind of music. And I just felt, because it was Black History Month, that this might be a very interesting clip showing that besides fighting for our country in World War I, they were the progenitors, if that's the right word, to ragtime, to a real type of ragtime music. In this world, if this world were devoid of music, I truly do not believe humankind would have made it this far. Each and every known human tribe on this planet has derived musical instruments from a pipe to harps, to violins, banjos, pianos, flutes, a variety of drums, Scottish pipes, Spanish guitars, rock and roll, country music guitars, and so many other types of musical expressions coming from the instruments and their gifted peoples. The pleasure and almost anesthetic quality of feeding the hunger of the soul for its sounds. This past Monday, Stevie Wonder's music and genius was celebrated. This gifted human being has been blessing this planet world over for decades, bringing joy and comfort with his seemingly endless talent. And to make a point for those people who believe that people with disability can't function or do or cannot contribute, Stevie Wonder is a perfect example. He's been blind since birth, and look what he's achieved. Music from other geniuses like George and Ira Gershwin, Glenn Miller, the Dorsey brothers, drummers like Gene Krupa and Ginger Baker, Ravi Shankar's Zithar, Santana, Ray Charles, Herbie Hancock, Maroon 5, ABBA, Righteous Brothers, the Bee Gees, Hootie and the Blowfish, Della Reese, The Platters, Clyde McPhatter, Chuck Berry, Seal, Rick Astley. There are far too many men and women during the course of human history, from opera to rock and roll, from Broadway to gospel, who have contributed to the joy of a seeker of their sounds. To name all who did, to name all who did would be an impossible task for me, because I ran out of memory and time. But if I haven't mentioned someone, it's not meant out of discourtesy or disrespect or disregard. It's just that I put down as many as I could remember in the historical factor as well. It covers the past, the present, and the future talents. Stevie Wonder appeared and appears to have an endless supply of words and music to contribute to this sometimes truly messed up planet, much like Michael Jackson did. Music that once played energizes the soul, helps to reestablish one's equilibrium when it feels so out of sync with the way their lives are going. The contradictions, the violations, the disrespect that appears to be so much of their everyday lives. If I had to choose between music and television, music would win hands down. And I still listen to music more than TV. It makes me want to dance. I sing along with it. It lifts me up. It makes me smile from the inside out. It is like a gift God presented this messed up world from such as Stevie Wonder to prove that he is communicating with us, giving us hope through music. The uplifting sound of a Mahalia Jackson singing in her church choir, or Marian Anderson on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Aretha Franklin, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Annie Lennox, Anita Baker, Bonnie Raitt, Carrie Underwood, Celine Dion, Johnny Mathis, Janis Joplin, Al Green, Elvis Presley, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, Joe Cocker, ZZ Top, Ian Anderson, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, writing, addressing the wrongs ongoing and going on in our world all over our planet. Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole, Sam Cooke, Ray Charles, Donna Summer, Johnny Mathis, Spice Girls, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Jackie Wilson, Jefferson Airplane, Leanne Rimes, John Cicada, Ricky Martin, Shakira, Taylor Swift, Billy Preston, Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buffalo Springfield, Tina Turner, Buffy St. Marie, War, Marvin Gaye, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Cher, Sammy Davis Jr., The Moody Blues, Ricky Nelson, Linda Ronstadt, Barry Manilow, Michael Bolton, Melissa Etheridge, did I already mention her? Huey Lewis and the News, Ed Sheeran. He was one of the guests on Stevie Wonder's show. Barbra Streisand, without exception. I remember the first time I saw her on television, I was blown away, and am still blown away by her amazing talent and her passion for her music. Christina Aguilera never stops bringing me gladness when I hear her sing. Jose Feliciano, the Doobie Brothers, could not get enough of them and still can't. Sometimes I just keep replaying their music. And Michael McDonald, if ever a soul-filled singer exists, it is Michael McDonald. Talk about gripping, caressing sound that reaches one's inner being. Michael Bublé, Josh Groban, Luciano Pavarotti, Andrea Bocelli. He was also a guest on the Stevie Wonder show. Herb Alford and the Tijuana Brass. Their haunting, timeless recording of Rise. Anastasia, Anita Baker, Roberta Flack, the Jackson 5. Music can be like an aphrodisiac. A natural euphoria takes place. It can make one just move with the music, embrace the sound like a big soft pillow, giving comfort and relaxation. It is a natural high. The more I think, the more names come flooding into my head. The memories, happy and sad. Marching bands playing patriotic music, rallying one's love of country, responding to the joy it brings. For example, John Philip Sousa, who in 1888 composed the Marine Corps March Semper Fidelis, which means always faithful. It gives me goosebumps when I hear it or watch a parade where the sons and daughters Marines of this country are marching in unison. So glad God shared his musical magic in our world. I truly believe it had to be so those whose lives are complicated by unfairness and inequality can have something to embrace when they hear the sound that reawakens their hope and inner joy. Otherwise, why does music exist, and why did God give humankind this beautiful gift to be shared by those whose talents become our companions and compasses in many ways, feeding us when life becomes overwhelming, by those who refuse to recognize our rights? Jennifer Hudson, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Tennessee Ernie Ford, Lone Star, Johnny Cash, Kenny Rogers, Toby Keith, Dolly Parton, Garth Brooks, just to name a few. Peabo Bryson, Barry White, The Supremes with Diana Ross, Vanessa Williams. The music from Broadway, as in Les Mis, Sound of Music, Ragtime. So many very gifted musicians and music makers. I just cannot imagine being without the sound of music in our lives on this planet. What an empty life we the people would be living if people did not exist. Stevie Wonder's love of God also shines like a beacon in a sometimes very dark world. He is a luminary of endless light. So many to remember, so many to become a fan of as they present themselves in our current time frame, much like Sam Smith, who recently won 4 Grammy Awards for his soulful singing. Almost like he finally found a way to liberate his inner self with the sometimes hungry souls of our world, waiting for inspiration to the music they share to yet again inspire us to keep fighting the fight. Because this kind of beauty exists in our world, it bodes well for continued hope. Gwen Stefani, Pink, Lady Gaga, Adele, Tracy Chapman, talk about soulful. Elton John, another talented man who never seems to run out of music to compose and share. Kenny Loggins, George Michael, James Taylor, Carly Simon, The Mamas and the Papas, Boys to Men, New Kids on the Block, NSYNC. Music for me has been like an antidote to the ills of one's body and soul and life. It fixes what ails you and re-energizes one's tired hope. En vogue with their liberating music for women. I was lucky enough to see some of these gifted men and women at concerts like Isaac Hayes, Joe Cocker, Ike and Tina Turner, Al Green, Stevie Wonder, Sly and the Family Stone, Billy Squire, Loggins and Messina, just to name a few. And I watched religiously the Sonny and Cher TV show. These memories conjure up happier times and sometimes not so happy, and then come to realize one got through it. The protest music from Joan Baez, again Bobby St. Marie, a pure Native American female singer who was so good. The group War, their music is just as relevant today as it was during the Vietnam era of concern for many in our country. Backstreet Boys, Fleetwood Mac, Neil Sedaka, Gino Vanelli, Aerosmith, Bette Midler, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Edith Piaf, Judy Garland, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Enya. The list is endless where music is concerned. The unforgettable music of Porgy and Bess, West Side Story, Luther Vandross, the Boston Pops, Yanni, Womack and Womack, Tears for Fears, Anne Murray, Alana Miles, Barry White, Lionel Richie, Taylor Dayne, Simply Red, Rod Stewart, Madonna, Janet Jackson, Lady Smith Mambazo. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. I will spell it Mambazo, Lady Smith Black Mambazo. Music for all manner of human tribe, living and those no longer with us, whose music continues to quench the thirst and feed the need to hear their music and nourish ourselves yet again with its sound and sounds, no matter how old the music. One of my very favorites is Glenn Miller's In the Mood and his marching music depicted in his autobiographical movie played by James Stewart, where he took over the Army director's marching band baton and added his own rhythm, bringing the troops into step. Why? Because the music reached their inner beings in a happy footstepping in unison manner. lifting their spirits and marching smartly. These experiences, the citizens of this truly messed up and contradictory planet lives in each and every community, from the tiniest village to the largest metropolis, comes the best and the very worst of its peoples. I think that this too may have contributed to the fictional comic book superheroes being created to face the foes of wrongdoing and protecting those most needing protection and rescue, denied by those who continue to violate the rights of any given situation. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Batman and Robin, Catwoman, Aquaman, just to name a few. A few of the many created over time to address concerns seemingly not being addressed in the real world by the powers that be all over this planet. Even Mighty Mouse coming to the rescue of those, both human and animal. Why do you think that was and is? To give children hope? So in conclusion, let the music play on, and let real human superheroes become the rule and not the exception in doing their expected jobs and responsibilities constitutionally. Thank you to all mentioned herein and those who were not but are still here. Just could not remember everyone and those on the other side. Your music will always be a source of inspiration, fun, and joy. My next clip or video is Glenn Ouellette's contribution.
Happy day, yeah. Oh, what a happy day. Now when he washed my sins all away, he taught me how to watch and pray and live rejoicing every day. A happy day. Oh, what a great day. Yeah, hallelujah day. Now when he washed, whoa, when he washed my heavy load of sin all away. Happy, happy day, yeah. Oh, it's a great day. Now when he washed my sins all away, he taught me how to watch and pray and live a happy day. Oh, happy, happy day. Yeah, it's a great day. Now when he washed, oh, when he washed, my heavy load of sin all away. Happy, happy day, yeah. Oh, it's a great day. Now when he washed my sins away.
Okay, good luck, Mr. Roulette. I have one more video, and this one is, as I explained at the beginning of my program, it's one that every time I play it, I get goosebumps because when Whoopi first went to that convent, the kids were all disorganized. There was one boy in particular, I believe he was Muslim, or he believed in being Muslim, even though he was in a Catholic school. And the history of the slavery of his people gave him a very hard view of anybody to trust. In his version of his world, and she got him to start singing, and he had this really nice voice. And at a meeting of clergy and the nuns that were part of the school, some of the priests that came along and the students, he started singing and he blew everybody away. And so as the story progresses, the sisters do everything to raise money to be able to get to the event, to compete in the competition. And in the end, they do perform. And this is their performance. Oh, happy day.
Joyful, joyful Lord, we adore thee. God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee. You're
Teacher says take off your robes. Take off your robes. Do it quickly, come on. I don't know, just take off your robes.
Put on anything you want. If we're gonna go out there, we're gonna go out there comfortable. Some of us.
Pain and sadness drive the dark cloud down away. Give her the immortal gladness. Fill us with a light. Fill us with a light. Oh, fill us with the light of day.
Check the rhyme.
What's up? Joyful, joyful, Lord, we adore thee. And in my life, I put none before thee.
Yeah.
Since I was a youngster, I came to know that you was the only way to go.
So I had to grow and come to an understanding that I'm down with the kids, so now I'm demanding that you tell me who you're down with. See, 'cause all I know is that I'm down with G.O.D. And I'm a G.O.D.
And you know me.
You know what G.O.D.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a G.O.D.
And you know me.
What's up, G.O.D.?
Everybody, come and join the chorus, the mighty, mighty chorus, which the morning star began. The Father of love is riding over us. What have you done for him lately? Ooh, yeah. What have you done for him lately? He watches over everything, so we sing joyful, joyful, Lord. We adore thee, God of glory, Lord. Wonderful thou art before thee. Our Son of the clouds of sadness, drive the doors of doubt away. Fill us with the light of their love, fill us. Oh, we need you, yes we do, fill us.
With the light of day, Lord. As we pray, Lord. With the light of day, Lord.
No matter where we need you today. We need you. I'm here. Fill up, fill up, fill up, fill up. Fill us with the light of day. Light of day.
Can you imagine a nun dancing that way, the way Whoopi did? You know, it liberates the soul and makes your body come alive. And see the girl that was the lead singer. Her mother refused to sign the papers for permission for her to make the trip with the rest of the group, so she forced her mother's signature. And so that was a disobedient act. However, if she hadn't been there to open, they might not have won. And in the end, at the movie, the mother recognizes her daughter's ability and just praises her, you know, up one side, down the other. I can't say enough about that particular performance of this I don't know if it's a religious song, but it was performed in a religious context. It's I have a little cassette player just for that movie because I haven't been able to find. I'm sure there is, but I haven't been able to find a DVD that has the music for Sister Act 2. But I'm going to keep looking till I find it. It's just something that it's almost like an energy pill. I start jumping. I start jumping all over my apartment dancing. I can't sit still, and if I'm sitting down, I'm moving, and that's the way religious expression should be. It should be liberating. It shouldn't be one that is practiced with fear and intimidation. Okay, this is a book that I just got pieces from the past, and I'm waiting for another one. It's called Standing on My Sister's Shoulders, and I couldn't order it this month, but I'm going to try to order it next month. And it's the story of voices of heroic women in civil rights. And right on this cover is a picture of a lady, and she's saying, "If I die for something." Unita Blackwell, and there was a lot of pain and suffering, fighting for not only the rights of people of color, but people of color who were women, so they had a double whammy. Now, I wanted to try to squeeze in some of the information about the 369th Regiment that was formed from the National Guard's 15th Regiment of New York. The 15th Regiment was formed after Charles S. Whitman was elected governor of New York. He enforced a legislation that was passed due to the efforts of the 10th Cavalry in Mexico, which had passed as a law that had not manifested until June the 2nd, 1913. On October the 5th, 1917, longtime Secretary to Booker T. Washington, Emmett J. Scott, was appointed Special Assistant to Newton D. Baker, the Secretary of War. Emmett was to serve as a confidential advisor in situations that involved the well-being of 10 million African Americans and their roles in the war. While many African Americans who served in the Great War believed that upon returning home, racial discrimination would dissipate, that did not happen. Racial hatred after World War I was probably at its worst until the start of the Second World War. So with this American discrimination of African American soldiers, these troops were often sent to Europe, where they were used to fill vacancies in the French armies. Unlike the British, the French held high opinions of black soldiers, which made for a more positive environment when working together. Ironically, this made African American troops more passionate about fighting for America. This newly created patriotism by African Americans then led to the creation of the 369th Infantry Regiment. Once the United States entered into World War I, many African Americans believed that entering the armed forces would help eliminate racial discrimination throughout the United States. Many African Americans felt it was a God-sent blessing so that they could prove that they deserved respect from the white Americans through service in the armed forces. Through the efforts of the Central Committee of Negro College Men and President Wilson, had established a special training camp to train black officers for proposed black regiments. The 369th Infantry Regiment was constituted June the 2nd, 1913, in the New York Army National Guard as the 15th New York Infantry Regiment. It was organized on June the 29th, 1916, at New York City. The infantry was called into federal service on July the 25th, 1917 at Camp Whitman, New York. While at Camp Whitman, the 369th Infantry learned basic military practices. These basics included military courtesy, how to address officers, and how to salute. Along with these basics, they also learned how to stay low, out of sight during attacks, stand guard, and how to march in formation. After their training at Camp Whitman, the 369th was called into active duty in New York. While in New York, the 369th was split into 3 battalions in which they guarded rail lines, construction sites, and other camps throughout New York. Then on October 8, 1917, the regiment traveled to Camp Wadsworth in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they received training in actual combat. Camp Wadsworth was set up similar to the French battlefields. While at Camp Wadsworth, they experienced significant racism from local communities and other units. There was one incident in which 2 soldiers from the 15th Regiment, Lieutenant Europe and Noble Cecil, were refused by the owner of a shop when they attempted to buy a newspaper. Several soldiers from the White 27th Division came to the aid of their fellow soldiers. Lieutenant Europe had commanded them to leave before violence erupted. There were many other shops that refused to sell goods to the members of the 15th Regiment. So members of the 27th and 71st Divisions told the shop owners if they did not serve black soldiers, that they can close their stores and leave town. The white soldiers then stated, "They're our buddies, and we won't buy from men who will treat them unfairly." So it goes on and on. There's 13 pages to this, and I don't know if I'll get to all of it today. In France, the 369th was treated as if they were no different than any other French unit. They did not show hatred towards them and did not racially segregate the 369th. The 369th finally felt what it was like to be treated equally. The French accepted all black 369th with open arms and welcomed them to their country. The French were less concerned with race than the Americans and were short on troops. The 369th Infantry Regiment was relieved on May 8, 1918, from assignment to the 185th Infantry Brigade and went into the trenches as part of the French 16th Division. It served continuously to July the 3rd. The regiment returned to combat in the Second Battle of the Marne. Later, the 369th was reassigned to General Lebouc, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's Leboucs. And this is a blow-up of a military poster of our American soldiers paying homage to Lincoln, to Abraham Lincoln, for liberating them. And I would love to get a copy of this poster. I really would. But I'm going to keep this and frame it for now. Two medals of honor and many distinguished service crosses were awarded to the members of the regiment. The most celebrated man in this 369th was Private Henry Lincoln Johnson, a former Albany, New York rail station porter who earned the nickname Black Death for his actions in combat in France. In May 1918, Johnson and Private Needham Roberts fought off a 24-man German patrol, though both were severely wounded. After they expended their ammunition, Roberts used his rifle as a club and Johnson battled with a bolo knife. Reports suggest that Johnson killed at least 4 German soldiers and might have wounded 30 others. Usually black achievements and valor went unnoticed, despite the fact that over 100 men from the 369th were presented with American and or French medals. Among those honors, Johnson was the first to receive the Croix de Guerre awarded by the French government. This award signifies extraordinary valor. By the end of the war, 171 members of the 369th were awarded the Legion of Honor or the Croix de Guerre. Despite the fact that they were decorated upon returning to New York, the 369th Regiment were not allowed to participate in the Victory Parade of 1919. They were also not saluted by the MPs who were under orders not to. Doesn't that just make you sick? Soldiers of the 369th, 15th New York, who won the Croix de Guerre for gallantry in action in 1919. Private Ed Williams, Herbert Taylor, Private Leon Freitor, Private Ralph Hawkins, Sergeant H.D. Prentice, Sergeant Dan Storms, Private Joe Williams, Private Alfred Handley, and Corporal T.W. Taylor. There was a marching band, had relied upon not only in battle but also for morale. So by the end of their tour, they became one of the most famous military bands throughout Europe. They followed the 369 overseas and were highly regarded and known for being able to immediately boost morale. While overseas, the 369th made up less than 1% of the soldiers deployed, but were responsible for over 20% of the territory of all the land assigned to the United States. During the war, the 369th Regimental Band, under the directions of James Reese Europe, became famous throughout Europe. It introduced the until then unknown music called jazz to British, French, and other audiences and started an international demand for it. At the end of the war, the 369th returned to New York City, and on 17 February 1999, paraded through the city. This day became an unofficial holiday of sorts for all of Harlem. Many black school children were dismissed from school so that they could attend the parade. With the addition of many adults, there were thousands of people that lined the streets to see the 369th Regiment. The parade began on 5th Avenue at 61st Street, proceeded uptown past ranks of white bystanders, turned west on 110th Street, and then turned onto Lenox Avenue and marched into Harlem, where black New Yorkers packed the sidewalks to see them. The parade became a marker of African American service to this nation. In 1933, the 369th Regiment Armory was created to honor the 369th Regiment for their service. This armory stands at 142nd and 5th Avenue in the heart of Harlem. This armory was constructed starting in the 1920s and was completed in the 1930s. The 369th Regiment Armory was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1994. In 2003, the New York State Department of Transportation renamed the Harlem River Drive as the Harlem Hellfighters Drive. This 4-mile road has become a way to remember the regiment that fought to defend France in the First World War. Then on September the 29th, 2006, a 12-foot high monument was unveiled to honor the 369th Regiment. This statue is a replica of a monument that stands in France. The monument is made of black granite and contains the 369th crest and rattlesnake insignia. The 369th Infantry Regiment has continued to live on since World War I. At the end of the World War, they were still seen each year in a parade in which they marched throughout the streets of Harlem and onto a train that took them to a summer camp that they participated in each year. Then, in more recent history, the 369th Sustainment Brigade was formed and served in battles in Desert Storm, Iraq Freedom, and even the War on Terror. So for all of you dark-minded people who really appear to think that if a person is not your color or your religion or your whatever, your freedom was bought by and paid for at the price of these men and women's lives. So don't you think if you can respect that, respect the fact that your freedom came at a very high price, and that there's so many in civilian life that hold political title, starting from the city to the federal, the city to the state to the federal, that abuse every single day the constitutional rights of men and women and children in many communities that was fought for by other men and women in prior battle and in prior history. And it didn't matter what color. And these people, these guys, these soldiers, they were considered the best at what they did. The very, very best. And when soldiers, come home even today, they have to battle for their rights. They have to battle for medical treatment and clean hospital surroundings. So when is American politics going to wake up to the fact that there is a price to pay because they paid a price and they're entitled to that price? It's almost time for me to go. I didn't cover everything, but this is just part one of part two, because I will be talking about the civil rights and the people, Black History Month, and people on both sides of racial composition that have contributed to keeping our Constitution alive. Both men and women, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. Freedom isn't free, ladies and gentlemen. It really isn't. And you can find this information on wikipedia.org or wikipedia.com. Let me see, .org, wikipedia.org, or just put it in your search bar, Harlem Hellfighters. And there's a litany of information there, not only for the battles that they won, but for the music that they brought to the other side of the world. Jazz. Freedom isn't free. It really isn't. So long until next time.